day 4 of the August 96 10-day retreat in Springwater. This question came up yesterday. In coming here, do we need to have experiences? And the person referred to my mentioning in a talk yesterday how for someone a shift in focusing on different sounds to no focus turned into some wholesome perception of sound. And actually, as I was reporting this, the thought did arise, what is this reporting going to do to people as they hear this? That's why I usually refrain from this. Because as we were unfolding there in the meeting, hearing about someone else's experience, very easily, I don't want to say inevitably, but very easily arouses comparison to my experienceless existence here. Should I work harder to get that? Or if one had this experience, someone mentioning spiritual pride, feeling better than others, or the ambition that we all may have encountered already, particularly if we were engaged in somewhat competitive spiritual training centers, to get there fastest, the first, the best. It's all programmed into us long before we ever started doing this kind of work. And this may trigger it, mobilize it, or even enhance it. So are we here to have experiences? It's a good question, an important one to look at. And in asking this question, what do we mean by having an experience? Formulating it this way and thinking of it in this manner, is there the me that has or should have experiences, wanting to enhance itself, feel better, more secure? Does this whole striving for experience strengthen the me? Without necessarily shedding light on it. I remember in the center where I trained, in the series of koans that one goes through, there were several koans dealing with this so-called spiritual pride. In the Zen tradition, it's called the Zen stink. And one demonstrated how it was or how one was free of it. And yet, attention was never concretely drawn to all the stuff that was going on for one there. concretely, the robes or the roxus one wore if one had gotten through a koan, or as a teacher, the stuff surrounding the mat. Subtle and not so subtle hierarchies of people. This was not gone into because that served to maintain the tradition. Which sort of seemed to be off limits, even though it is not put out that way. So, can we look at it here as we sitting together, working together, questioning together what goes on in oneself, the comparisons, the wanting, the downgrading or upgrading of oneself or others? Or is that absent or seen through and not indulged in? Actually, we try to give precious little cause to this kind of thing. And yet it happens, particularly if something is mentioned, like I did yesterday in the talk, and did not immediately warn about this. I'll point out, not to now, like one person said, it was like dangling a carrot in front of me. What I could get or what I should already have gotten by now. And that's all false thinking, which veils the presence of insects chirping and a fan moving. So what are we here for? Each one must ask themselves. My understanding is to come more and more intimately in touch with what we truly are and what we are not, and yet believe to be our true self, all of our ideas about ourselves, our history, our glorious or inglorious past, our possible future. The defensiveness of this imagery, protection of the story, which manifests when it is questioned or attacked or criticized. Hurt, we talked about it yesterday or the day before. The hurt and the reaction springing from hurt, attacking the other or withdrawing or at least harboring a grudge or a memory because we think we have not been treated well. But what are we? Really, truly, deeply, profoundly, fundamentally, what are we? The series of incidents pasted together as a story with tremendous physical emotional investment, attachment. That's what we think we are. And that's why we're so afraid, so easily aroused to jealousy or envy or self-deprecation, because this story compares unfavorably with another. Can we glimpse for moments at a time? And if only in the beginning intellectually, the futility of this game. So what are we really, truly? beyond all imagery and storyline and projections and all the emotions that go with it. That question was asked very early on in a meeting. What is this profundity, the depth of us? Go easy on the words. I got to go easy on them myself. And if someone tells me that word does not ring a bell, then chuck it and find another one. But stay with what it is that one is really trying to express. That's the only important thing. Words will come, albeit never completely sufficient, never covering the whole thing. It's impossible for a word to do that. The whole thing is beyond words. And yet there's an urge to convey it, to communicate it to each other. That seems to happen very spontaneously. Discovering something true, meaning coming out of the wholeness of seeing or listening or being. The fact that one is not this image that is so potential, such a potential agitator, mobilizer of hatred or anger. One isn't that. It is seen out of wholeness, out of the quietness of listening. And then the very spontaneous urge to communicate this, maybe with ever-increasing wisdom that one cannot just communicate this to anybody who wishes or doesn't wish to listen, rather doesn't wish to listen, is not interested in this. The conveying back and forth flowers when we're both interested, which is an amazing phenomenon. I can experience it in meetings. People coming here who are interested and looking and wondering and searching. It's like priming the pump. And the water flows, sometimes gushing too fast. And if someone may ask the same question, but is not really into it as yet, maybe tomorrow, then the words don't flow in the same way. So to conceive of this coming in intimate touch with what is going on for human beings like you and me, conceiving of that as an experience is a false notion. An experience that I have to have and carry home. That's as false as the notion that there is an I to have an experience. Because in truth, it is the absence of the I that reveals reality as it is. The absence of the I, maybe just for tiny moments at a time, that occurs in quiet listening. The gentle breeze moving the leaves, the hum of the fan, the breathing, and birds calling, the hum of insects permeating everything and everybody. In such momentary or extended quiet listening, there's no need for self-reference. Even though it does crop up, it's so habitual in the beginning, of our lives, which may be 60 years, to bring oneself into relationship with what it is that is heard. Oh, I think it's wonderful, I can hear that tree, I can imagine it, and sort of eyeing it up habitually, not purposely to bolster oneself, although that's a byproduct. But these habits are so entrenched, so habit-formed, so powerful, and yet so discernible when attention kicks in, awareness or waking up happens on its own. Then at this moment, the I that was in charge reverberates as a memory and may immediately take over again. Now I have had some insight. Now I am a spiritual person, or whatever these thoughts are habituated to say, to get a little bit of a rise of energy, good feeling, to compensate for our usual deflated sense of self-importance. To understand and see and throw light on all of this through this quiet listening and looking. Can that happen in a retreat like this? And noticing that the expectant mind or the expecting mind is clearly in the way. It already brings a certain orientation of the body toward something. This can become noticeable when there is a subtle awareness. A goal coming to mind and the body switching into an orientation. And seeing that allows the body to relax again. Relax in simply being here, not knowing what will come next, not even quite knowing what's here now. Comes a time when this is too much effort to think about. Although when this is not the case, then it seems as though we can only be aware if we think about it. That's what people tell me, at least. But it is not inevitably so. It's possible to be and listen and attend and see and feel, breathe, and trees moving and planes humming with no effort. No effort even to put it into words as it is happening right now. And these words don't disturb the sound of leaves and branches waving in the wind. And the coolness felt on the skin. And the breath and swelling of the abdomen. And the release of it. Who is doing it? It's a misleading question because there is no one who's doing it. It's happening. And can it be felt, seen, listened to as that, just happening? In this state of being and moving or not moving, there's no concept of having experiences. That belongs to our rigid frames of mind, identified with me and my future and past. maybe in this connection fits another question someone had. Person here for the first time. And as most people who come here these days, practically everyone has had past spiritual training. This person asking, must one go through pain to come to enlightenment? Is that inevitable must, inevitably interwoven in this whole process of waking up, like giving birth to a child? Of course, the giving birth to a child has changed over the years, hasn't it? I haven't delivered a child. We adopted. But women who have had natural childbirth, some of them really had that ability to move with it and not be afraid of it. And then it was not this usual having pain and having fear of it and having to protect oneself through ether, but just moving with this whole thing, which, barring complications, is quite a natural process. So, can one disabuse oneself of all these ideas one brings here, which is not easy, because we don't realize how full the knapsack is. And see what happens. And if pain manifests, wherever, pit of the stomach, in the heart, head, wherever, legs. But person wasn't talking about pain in the legs from sitting long. It was more this mental, spiritual, whatever, undefined pain. Leave it undefined, and if it arises, die to all ideas and resistance about it. Do you understand that? Dying to the resistance to it. To the idea what this is and will bring me. Or can I manage it? Die to all of that. Meaning, it's a given. Here is this thing which one has called pain. But it need not even be labeled any longer, because the label brings the associations of the past and future and what other people have said and written and gone through. Just dying into this whatever, without any choice. As long as there's a choice, there's usually escape. Or force and violence. Seeking out a training in which one is forced. Or learns to force oneself. And we question from the very beginning whether it is possible to meet with whatever arises non-violently, totally, unconditionally, gently. I don't mean gentle in contrast to violence, but a total giving. See, I'm using words, but each one has to and can, obviously, find this out for themselves. It happens. Particularly when there's no more choice, one has tried everything else. It hasn't worked. And it's an amazing thing to let things happen and be there fearlessly, because fear is already a running away. unconditionally giving or being means no side view out for a reward or result. Noticing that, well, one can tell at such a moment that this takes away from the totality of being with this thing. The words are dualistic, the state is not. But that, again, is thinking, and that takes a different distracting energy. One will discern that by oneself, that it is out of place, not indicated, not necessary, and will yield this energy to this total affair. Of dying to all one's resistance and hesitation in being here. It's not a zeroing in on something, a focusing, because the wind is blowing and the leaves are trembling and the breath is moving. It may stop at times, whatever it needs to do. Let me use the remaining time before these 2 days of vacation. May it be a real vacation for all of us. Vacating all the stuff. Wow, that's dangling a carrot. People have reported all kinds of states of boredom or sitting, as it were, in the doldrums, stuck in negativity. Whatever. Each one of us can look right now at what seems to be the main leitmotif of our moods this moment, or the last moment we remember. And as one describes it to oneself and then also to me, all kinds of attitudes go with that description, don't they? Sort of the main one, I wish it was different. Why this and not that? A very common thought that this will last forever. I'm stuck in this for good. Drawing conclusions about this so-called oneself, because one has these stucknesses. Evaluating, we've been through that at the beginning of the talk. Which all means what? As the wind moves through the branches. What does it mean, feeling stuck? And responding to it negatively, painfully, despairingly, hopelessly. First of all, it means, doesn't it, that there has been attention, or else one couldn't report about it. Awareness sheds light on a state of boredom or stuckness. And then, instead of remaining with attention, we habitually get sucked into what it is that shows up in attention. In attention. And what shows up is what we've mentioned: doldrums, stuckness, boredom. And trying to comment on it, take an attitude, operate on it. And disregarding so easily this precious moment of waking up to it that brought it into light. So can there be, over time, I don't know how it happens, but it does happen, a switch from this constant occupation and preoccupation with what it is that's happening to us to the awareness of it, and awareness of trees and wetness on the skin and pain in the hips, birds twittering, heat moving. But see, what I'm listing always are the objects. That's probably what is part of the source of this. The objects are not important. They come and go, they change all the time. They're not significant. What is significant is the listening, the attending, in which things come and go on their own, freely, without effort. So, nobody has ever complained about being stuck in listening. Or is it just that the objects are too boring? So then listening becomes too boring, wants to engage in some more rigorous activity. To be aware of that too and not be seduced by it, but keep listening. Is that possible? Of course it's possible. Does it happen a lot or all the time? Of course not. Maybe not. Not to have any standards erected for one, by oneself or others. But there's much more awareness, listening going on than we give ourselves credit for. Not that we need to give ourselves credit for it. It's a manner of talking. But it is this instant suction into the object, which is the state of body-mind, or what is happening around one. Because this is how we've been trained. We're all object-oriented. Almost from the day of birth. Beautiful thing to observe in little children. Little babies crawling, beginning to crawl and grasping for things and examining things, looking, listening, licking. Interested in everything and dropping it so quickly because something else happens. And then, of course, in school, we're totally engaged in the outer things. Maybe it's a little bit different in Eastern countries than in the Western world, where there's been thousands of years of tradition of inward looking, inward examining, rather than outward, scientific, or, well, possessiveness probably runs through all cultures, needing to acquire, to own, to possess, to keep, to have. So whatever the reason for this outward boundness, it's an amazing journey to stay with inwardness. journey may not be the right word, because inwardness may not move at all. It's only the outer states and objects that move, while awareness is still and stable and open and without change. So how quiet can we begin to listen as these subtle wrinkles of resistance are discovered and smoothed out? Not listen for something, but listen without an object. Letting this whole life display itself freely. We will end here for today.